That midweek time frame is still the area of interest we're watching for a potential impactful system to move into Michigan. I am Ryan. This is Michigan Storm Chasers. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we do weather content in Michigan all year long, from daily videos like this one to severe weather coverage with severe and tornado warnings 24/7, 365. We got you covered here in Michigan for your weather information and weather education. Let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to hope to keep this short, but I also want to be to the point and be a little bit more thorough with today's expectations. So, if you watched yesterday's video, we're watching a system that's going to move in Wednesday evening into Thursday morning. It's going to bring snow, sleet, ice, and perhaps rain as well. And areas have shifted since yesterday. So, going into the model here, this is the Canadian model. That's what I'm going to go off of mostly today because I agree with the placement and the overall evolution of how the system develops. So looking at today's system, we have snow further north up there in northern Michigan, a mix of rain, perhaps some freezing rain further south. No big accumulation today, no big impacts, but slick travel definitely a possibility up there. As that moves out for the evening tonight, just some scattered snow showers remain for the UP. Nothing too major up there. Fast forward into Wednesday morning, our system begins to develop to our south and to our west here in Missouri. That's going to push up our way into Wednesday evening. So fast forward to Wednesday at 10 p.m. right here. We're seeing that precip begin to move in. Snow further north, up here in the UP, perhaps northwestern lower. And then sleet in orange, freezing rain in pink. Then obviously rain in green. That's going to move up again, 10 p.m. here in this model. Let's go to 1 a.m. Let's go to 4 a.m. We're going to pause it right there at 4 a.m. The big change, number one, with today's models is a south shift in our mixed precip. Yesterday, we did a map that kind of highlighted precipitation all the way up to here, Alpena, Gaylord areas, point southward to get a mix. That line looks like at least at this point, it has shifted to the south here from roughly south of Flint, roughly around the Ithaca area, over to Port Huron, and then point southward here to the border. And looks like there's a large area, perhaps some sleet that could mix in from Grand Rapids to Ithaca to Port Huron in orange there. So we're going to watch that very closely. Further south, though, freezing rain is a big concern here across Northwest Ohio, North Indiana, and far South Michigan, along, near, and south of the I-94 corridor. So the area has really shrunken from a little bit of a wider area to a little bit of a narrow area, which is pretty typical with these systems. But overall impacts for travel will be likely the same, whether in snow, sleet, or freezing rain. It'll likely be slick come Wednesday evening into Thursday morning especially. Now, the big question here is how much snow, how much ice, what are the impacts, etc., etc. We talked yesterday about potential impacts to power and also tree damage. And again, I'll reiterate this, that impacts start roughly around a quarter of an inch or 0.25 of ice accretion. Accretion is a fancy term for basically accumulation. So when we get a quarter inch of ice on tree limbs, power lines, that could be enough weight to bring them down, cause impacts, blah, 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 blah. We look around that amount and higher for impacts to begin. So I want to show you a couple things and mention a couple things here as well. So with this, looking at first and foremost our snowfall expectations, this is based off, again, the Canadian model. Through Thursday evening, we're seeing a wide area of northern Michigan, especially up here in the UP, because this is the UP. It's going to be more snow than is going to be a mix. Further south here, especially toward that sleet line, snow sleet line, could mix in and cut off accumulations here across the thumb, the Tri-Cities, Mount Pleasant as well. But for the most part, if you're in northern lower Michigan or the UP, anywhere from 2 to 6 inches of snow would be the expectation for you, with isolated higher amounts definitely a possibility. Nothing significant like a foot or more, nothing like that, not going to be a major snowmaker. I think it's still going to be impactful for travel. The big concern comes further south where you have that freezing rain. So switching now to the freezing rain map on the Canadian model through Thursday evening, this is what it's showing. Now recall, a quarter inch of ice is about the impact level here, and these are likely overdone just slightly. So take a few tenths, maybe, or not a few tenths, but take a few numbers, roll back just a little bit. So overall, though, we're looking at accumulation of ice around the 94 corridor here of anywhere from a tenth to 2/10, perhaps 3/10 in spots. And I do think that is a very realistic expectation with this system, but there is a caveat here I'm going to mention here just a second. overall accumulation of ice should be tied south of Grand Rapids, south of Lansing, and south of Flint and Port Huron areas, especially along 94. That's where models really start to hone in on this system being impactful for. Now, I do think most areas here are going to fall between a tenth and 2/10, which is below impact level, but still, even with a tenth or 2/10, that is going to be very slick for travel. It may make travel near impossible in spots as well, because if it's just a sheet of ice out there, think of it that way. But in terms of power outages and tree damage, I do think it's going to come down to one thing in particular. It should be more localized regardless. But I want to highlight one thing here on the NAM model. The NAM is a shorter term model that's showing what we call a dry slot. Basically, a dry slot is just that. It's a pocket of dry air within these systems where precip stops or just doesn't fall at all. Moving into that Wednesday night time frame here, we're going to notice something on the model. Here's your system developing. As it moves up into Michigan, notice a couple things. We're going to pause it right there. We're going to zoom in. Notice how there's very little fill-in of that precip. It's a lot of dry, spotty precipitation there across South Michigan. What that basically is saying is there's a lot of dry air here. Precip may not fall very efficiently. As a result, we may not get much in the way of any precip, impactful precip at least, across southern Michigan. Now, is that probably going to be dry the entire time? No, that's not what we're saying. But there's a good probability, or perhaps not probability, but a good solution here there's a possible solution here that may limit overall ice accretion across South Michigan. So if we're looking to get less in the way of impacts in terms of the system, we want that dry air to fill in overnight Thursday. That's going to be the main factor and the main driver of if we're going to get higher impacts, because on the opposite of this dry slot, if that dry slot doesn't develop, if we get pure freezing rain for a good chunk of Thursday overnight, we could be looking at those higher end totals like the Canadian model is showing here, between 2/10, perhaps 3/10 of an inch, which could bring down isolated power outages and also make travel very hazardous. So main point I'm going to make here, shift south, freezing rain likely south of Grand Rapids, Lansing, Port Huron, Flint areas, potentially impactful, dependent on the amount of dry air we're going to see here. That's going to be a big factor into this forecast. Overall, though, I want to highlight one spot in particular that may see higher ice accretion, and that is basically the Irish Hills area, or points around it, from basically Hillsdale into western Lenawee, Jackson, Washtenaw, Livingston County, this particular area right here. That area is a higher elevation where ice accretes a little bit quicker. We are going to watch that area very closely for potential higher impacts with this system, but again, dependent on that dry slot overnight Thursday. So in summary, snow further north, a mix of sleet and freezing rain further south. Dry air may cut down on totals. How much, if it's going to cut down at all, will be the big factor on if this system is going to be impactful in terms of an ice storm for some of us, or if it's going to be not much at all. Overall, I think ice accretion across South Michigan will be between a tenth and 2/10. Nothing too major. And again, isolated higher amounts are definitely a possibility here. Going up into the European model, this is what we call FRAM. This is a more realistic expectation of ice accretion. I do agree with it, and I'm going to show you this map because I agree with it. Basically, from that Grand Rapids to Flint to Port Huron area, we're seeing a tenth of an inch of ice up there. Further south, though, especially along the 94 corridor, about a tenth to 2/10 of an inch. Close to a quarter inch of ice there expected here on the European model. I do agree with this map pretty well. Likely going to follow a similar pattern with our forecast here, which may come out later today. Overall, we're going to have to keep an eye on this, wait and see. In tomorrow's forecast video and also forecast will be much more detailed and hopefully nail down specifics as well. So with that being said, moving on to the future here, we're going to cover this very briefly. A second system is likely on the horizon here. Here's our first system on the European. I didn't show you this because I do think the freezing rain line is further north further north than what I expect to happen. As that moves out, though, our attention then turns to a second system for the weekend, which is right here. A similar picture being shown with snow in the north, freezing rain in the middle, and then rain on the south side. So again, Saturday is a time frame to watch as well for another similar system to what's coming midweek this week. We'll keep you guys updated on that. Too far out to get specific. We're going to watch it. We're going to communicate as such as details become clear. With that being said, today's video is sponsored by Storm Guard Roofing and Construction, based out of Macomb, Oakland counties in Detroit metro area. 248-985-3239. They do roofing and construction needs on your homes. Feel free to give them a call. Thank you to Storm Guard for becoming a sponsor here at MSC and helping keep our operations up and rolling. With that being said, I will catch you guys tomorrow here at Michigan Storm Chasers. You guys stay safe, travel safe. We got you guys covered here.